This is by far the strongest build of the season, with screen-wide clears and one-tapping all Tier 4 pinnacle bosses. And in this guide, we'll cover how anyone in the game can play the build, whether you're broke as shit, leveling, or if you're Fubgun's offspring baptized in divines.
Where's the fucking divines, you little bitch?
This one's for you. And what about swiping even harder? I mean, progressing even further than my current version is capable of? Well, shit, I've done the calculations, and the build is capable of doing more than 100 million DPS. So let's just say you're set for the rest of the season if you go with this build. All right, enough yapping. What makes this build so godly? Well, for starters, there's no surprise that Lightning Spear is broken when it comes to map clearing, and it's all due to 3 interactions. 1. The skill splits when hitting enemies. 2. The skill chains, which it normally doesn't when used with Volt. And 3rd, we can hit even more targets by consuming Frenzy Charges. And when it comes to gathering Frenzy Charges, we have Combat Frenzy, which I'll show in the gem section how we trigger easily, and also Sniper's Mark, which we will automatically cast when we crit. And seeing as we'll easily run around with 100% crit, let's just say this one triggers quite frequently. To further boost our frenzy generation, we have Avidity, which in turn allows us to gain 7 frenzy charges instantly. This is an ascendancy node for the dead eye, but you can indeed play without it and go with a huntress. The main difference between the classes is that you'd have less frenzy charge generation as a huntress, but more damage on average, so no need to go crying that you'd have to re-roll to the other class. They are both fine choices. Alright, now to fully appreciate this magnificent build, let's check out the gems and gear to see what differs between this version and other Lightning Spear builds you may see on the market. For starters, we'll use Lightning Spear when clearing maps and Wind Serpent's Fury on single target. For this particular version, I managed to snatch both the Spirit Boner helmet and Sacred Flame before they skyrocketed in price. The Spirit Boner helmet makes your enemies count as low life, which in turn means that we're able to utilize Execute and a bunch of other low-life passives, doubling our damage. When it comes to the Sacred Flame, this is utilized for 3 reasons, as it grants us fire damage, which on our Lightning Spear, we turn into cold to trigger Combat Frenzy when freezing, but it also grants us purity of fire and spirit. The only thing on the scepter that differs from the budget version, however, is the extra fire damage part, as you're going to grab a rare scepter with spirit and purity of fire if you don't have it. Alright, back to the gems. Why I'm talking about purity of fire is due to it granting us 40% fire resistance, and you can slap a bunch of spirit gems in it without actually spending any spirit. Probably a bug, but a lovely one. Our lovely regular spear stab we're using for several reasons, and we'll use it on single target to gather frenzy charges. But also, it breaks its armor, so we'll gain more physical damage on single target. It blinds the boss, so we can use blindside. Rage for some additional rage, in case we don't one-tap the boss. And finally, pinpoint to get that crit chance to max. For our Lightning Spear, Volt is the most important, as you know by now, unless you skip the intro, in which case, fuck you. We then have Perpetual Charge to keep those frenzy charges up, Martial Tempo for big dam and clear, Embitter to turn our extra fire damage into cold. And again, if you don't have Sacred Flame, then you skip this one, and finally Longshot for the big damage multiplier. Next up is Wind Serpent's Fury. To utilize this, you need frenzy charges, and the more you have, the more damage the thing deals. This is why the Ranger is slightly superior at single target, as we have Thrilling Chase. Ambrosia is one crazy gem, granting us huge lightning damage by spending mana charges. This also means that you want to have as many charges as possible on your mana flask. If you have the Spirit Boner, then Execute is a must-have along with our damage multipliers, Concentrated Effect, Blindside, and Overextend. For our combat frenzy, we're utilizing freeze to gather charges and combine that with profusion for additional ones. And again, don't have sacred flame? No worries, you then simply grab some cold damage on your rings and you are going to freeze enemies. Next we have cast on crit, where we have our frenzy generator sniper's mark and a few energy generators and mana cost reduction. Wind dancer for the evasion and elemental conflux for a shit ton of damage. Don't have enough spirit for this one? No worries, you can ditch it. For mapping, I typically use the Rue mount, which requires less spirit and makes you fast as hell. Next is Infernal Cry. This is a must-have when nuking down bosses. It grants us a bunch of fire damage by itself, but also damage via premeditation, enraged warcry, and rage generation. Combine this one with Second Wind, and you'll also generate enough of rage on bosses. For the next gem, I'm rocking Voltaic Mark. You'll throw this on the bosses only. It grants a small damage increase, but also makes sure that the boss is shocked before you use your Wind Serpent, as I sometimes found myself having a boss that wasn't shocked. It's not a mandatory skill if you find it annoying, however. And finally, of course, our Herald of Thunder. A must-have for screen-wide clearing. Boost this with some damage, AoE and lightning infusion, and you're not only getting clear, but also a permanent 35% damage buff for your lightning spears. Absolutely lovely. All right, friends, that's the gems. Let's check out the gear now so you know what to prioritize. But first, a word from today's sponsor, my ass. Nice one. I'd also like to mention that if you're leveling, I have a planner version for you as well. The difference there is that you're not relying on frenzy charges or Wind Serpent. Rather, Primal Strike is by far the strongest single target skill when leveling. The details are in the planner for how to use it. Now, as you may be aware of, we are having a busy month in the ARPG community, and my wallet has been bleeding money.
He's dead.
He has no wallet, I checked.
Here we go.
Money.
Precious
Money.
But using instant gaming, a wallet amputation and lifelong debts have been successfully averted. Because why would you ever pay full price on a game when you can get the same exact game just with a humongous discount? Now sure, there are some shady websites out there, but instant gaming is 100% safe and easy to use. And with their customer support, you can get assistance within minutes. So, to summarize, stop being dumb as shit and use instant gaming for all your future gaming endeavors. My personal link is in the description. Make sure to use it, and we'll continue with the guide. Okay, and off to the gear we go. First off, we have the Tangle Tongue. This is pretty much a must-have. Fortunately, having a mere decent one is cheap, and it's important due to the humongous base crit chance it has, allowing you to reach upwards of 100% crit chance in combination with also forking, which easily doubles your damage by introducing extra crit chance and crit damage. For gem, you'd go for a Takaba Soul Core if you can afford it, otherwise go for one with increased elemental damage. Next up, we have another important piece, the Spirit Bone Helmet. I'm using this when nuking down bosses, and I also have 2 weapon sets for this reason. Why? Well shit, let me explain, will you? So, this helmet makes your enemies count as low life. This in turn allows us to use this cluster here, doubling our damage due to its high scaling. But the cluster is fucking useless when the helmet is not on, and why would we have it on, while mapping when it only works against enemies that are close to you? Exactly, there's no reason to. Instead, we just have 2 weapon sets and go for the other one with a defensive helmet as we're mapping. Pretty clever, right? Yeah. Next up is the Beacon of Aziz. This allows us to completely bypass enemy resistances and in turn allowing us to completely ditch elemental penetration in the tree. For anointing, Wild Storm is absolutely bonkers. But if you're a broke boy, then anything that has the word damage on it should do. I've listed a few options in the planner. For the rings, chest and sneakers, all you need to give a shit about is having a bunch of defensives and flat damage. For defensives, you're mainly focusing on max life, followed by getting your resistances capped. The rest should be spent on evasion and energy shield where possible. That, with a full focus of having evasion on the chest to fully utilize a few nodes in the passive tree. The rest of your stats, that is other than flat damage and defensives, can be spent on stats, dex, int, and then lastly strength. You want quite a bit of dex and int to use the highest gems, so it's definitely worth prioritizing getting those too. When it comes to the 3 final items, you have some different options. For the gloves, I'm currently rocking Hand of Wisdom and Action. Having regular gloves with a buttload of flat damage on them is stronger, but rocking these is slightly cheaper. You do, however, want to focus a lot of intelligence if you use these ones. For the belt, you definitely want to go for ingenuity and some decent rings. Otherwise, skip it and go for a defensive option. And finally, the offhand. I bought this one before they skyrocketed in price, as they are now disgustingly expensive. But you don't need this at all. Instead, you can purchase a rare scepter with purity of fire on it. The only thing you'd lose is the additional damage, but you can still play the build just fine. And the reason we need a scepter is due to cast on crit, costing a buttload of spirit and purity of fire also brings us a bunch of fire resistance. Alright, so that's the gear. Next up we have the passives, so let's check them out, shall we? For the Ascendancy nodes, we need Avidity for charging up with Frenzy charges, and Thrilling Chase to make our Wind Serpent to start one-tapping bosses. Other than that though, Tailwind is the way to go, as to not fucking die El Mao, and get some movement speed. Next we head on over to get additional Frenzy charges. We're grabbing 7 charges in total, which Thrilling Chase will double for a total of 14 Wind Serpents. We then grab this low life cluster down here for the damage in one of our weapon skill sets, and continue onwards for some damage and the spear cluster down south. We then head on up, grab some Frenzy charges and crit, before continuing to the defensive clusters right here. Bestial Skin is why we need a bunch of evasion on our chest, as it will double it. We then have some additional damage via Falcon technique, and an additional damage cluster for the boss nuking weapon set, while grabbing evasion for the defensive one along with our final Frenzy charge. Heading upwards we find ourselves some additional evasion, energy shield, and all the way up here Spectral Ward, which grants energy shield depending on how much evasion we have on our chest, again making a strong evasion chest highly valuable. And finally the crit cluster, because crit equals big damn equals big dick. That's just a fact. Nicely done, friends. Passive tree complete. There's but one thing left now, and that's to get good, you bunch of losers. So listen closely as to not screw up this beautiful build. When mapping, it's real simple. All you do is run around and throw out lightning spears. The cast on crit will automatically grant you Frenzy charges in combination with Combat Frenzy, so there's nothing to think about here. You can go with or without the Row A mount. Just in case you do, don't run headfirst into a bunch of mobs and get gangbanged, as getting stunned will be your demise. Now on to bossing. This is rather easy as well. You just need to do the wombo combo in the right sequence. First, you want to have voltaic markup as to make sure the enemy is shocked at all times before you complete your combo. Then, you start stabbing the boss in the gut as to gather Frenzy charges. Once you see the number 7 at the top left of your screen, you're ready to go. Use Infernal Cry twice, as you'll then maximize your rage and get the fire damage bonus, and obliterate the boss using Wind Serpent. If your gear is trash, and you don't kill it, the boss should be stunned from your Wind Serpent, and you can do the wombo combo again. But hopefully, the boss should be dead by now. And that, my friends, is all for this one. Check out Instant Gaming, drop a sub, and I'll see you in the next one.